Tene ta kasinke kapsala acherdo ye lam revo som dor tembe nane yen dor temba te tene ta tela kasin huba tardo jang kontrol Rinpoche ki sunga tardo ne lu dun chulu ni sindo sunga tene chulchul tela chulba tela ya tene tanda yela mepala yepar chulba sul tene yepate ngus mantong sul de tene ta dige hyula jerdo tene mepala yepar tong sul dige ye nelu de toni ge korte temperance pa ta tene yepate mantong sul te toni yinaya te ngo de Yeshe yonaya dandang ngaran sung korwin chunong ga kasala Yeshe te mantong junse tembe hyula tene ye nelu de tan tambo on de na ngo tomba ta rangin salwe Yeshe te ni nyamdo yepata bu tawe ne ta ta de temperance pa la 다 드링게 kapsala 칸 숭기 요아르세 나 데네 람데 노르두 점기 템퍼처 바레
Yesterday, we looked at the brief presentation of the ground from within the three initial sections of this text, the brief presentation of the ground, of the path, and of the fruition. And as was stated by Jomgon Lodro Tai, the presentation of the ground involves the presentation of how things are, the nature of things, and also the presence of bewilderment, or the manner of bewilderment. The verses of the text that we looked at yesterday were primarily or obviously concerned with the description of the manner of bewilderment. They showed first how in our bewilderment, we perceive as existing that which does not exist within the ground, and second, how through bewilderment we fail to see that which does exist within the ground. By implication, the first, showing how we perceive that which does not exist within the ground as existing, shows that the ground is emptiness. The second, which presented how we fail to see that which does exist within the ground, by implication showed that the ground is not just emptiness, but also inherent wisdom, which is what we fail to see or recognize. So, while showing the manner of confusion, these verses also pointed out that the true nature of things, the nature of the ground itself, is the unity of emptiness and lucidity. Now we turn to the next section of the text, which is a brief presentation of the path.
tene ta te ya jerdo lam hipate tang ran so ge jitang lam da jikpa nang hin je ge tene tanda koruwe chunong le remji gal ne tene ta tartu kendebo topju yapa je ge ndebo lam ro ge lam ta ba je yin bichna lam sung ge wa la tene te ya tanda ngaran so lam juma ta ba je yin na te kandi sin ro ge wa re se na ta tanda sa cha de pa yo ni yen do je lam ro ge Tene tanda ngaranso tumo maimbe lamde kandiji ne pegwi warese na tene tanda sacha yendo jelan ro maimba tanda ye nelu guden soru yongi ware la ye nelu de to ne tangbo ye nelu de mato pala chulne ye pate la tene mantrulwe ne la mantrulwati ka mantrulwa trubati dana ye pache mantrulwati phacha chela ye pache panda woji rebisina mare 다티 만출we ye nelu de to parchawe ke cherdo tene lamdi nyamsu lang ne de parchawa re la junsin ti cherna tati lamde la ya chitang ta lamde la namba nyin da buji yore la tene te ya tanda namba nyin da de karma pa sumba rangjung dojin se be chashin melam ga nang da song na 다치 타드 데니 예탄세 예생긴데 간데지레세 나 딱과 예바 딱은 탈 만원와지도 매바 쳇바 탈 만원와지 이게 다시 그 타당 타와지 레라 디 다시 그 타당 타와디 이게 내루데 또버샤웨 쳇도 람 간데지 드고 요아레세나 데니 도코르 타드 추니 람초키 송요아레라 람데 tene mepala yepar drone topa maimpa tene yepala mepar kurwa tapa maimpa ta koran ye nelu de che tawa yendola topa che ta te topar sepi ke tapla khandi che goge yore se na tene michi senam ji chu mimi yehi ji chu ni songdun ju basung yore la tene te la michi senam ji chu se na tene 당보 미미 예희지 초세나 tene 당보 디게 예 내루 디제 따와 yendola 따위게 때나 파 따위게 때나 파바 yen도 gambe nyons 롱니 gambar세 patela 미미 예희지 초숨이 와 tene 조어디 미미 예희지 초레 레데 예나야 미미 예희지 초라 tene 텔라 tene 조 다보 거기 와래라 진데 간데 거기 와래세나 미치스놈 주소데 거기 와래 되니 미치스놈 주소세나 간데 제 거기 와래세나 되니 대양 류지고니 소사바다 되니 대견들라 나가고니 소사바다 되니 이지고니 소사바다 되니 롱제지고니 소사발라소바 당가란서 그 간데 탑 넘버 나초부 그거니 미치스놈 주소사데 되니 미미 히치초데 코니 콘도 펠바르세바 소니 람초키 성네 다 데이터 미치스놈 주소도 미미 히치초니 성든주 부고니 되니 람데 드고기 와레소
In general, the path constitutes the process of gradually transcending the bewildered appearances of samsara and culminates with their eradication, which is what is referred to as the fruition or result. Now, the usual presentation of the path is of it as a process like, for example, traveling from one place to another. Here, however, it's pointed out that the path does not truly consist of going from one place or one state to another, but more of returning to the original nature, the recognition of which one has as yet failed to achieve. So, through relinquishing bewilderment and ignorance, one discovers that nature. And because the bewilderment is not intrinsic to the nature itself does not change. So therefore, there is no true moving from one place or one state to another. There is merely the return to what was always there, seeing it, however, without bewilderment or ignorance. The path has two aspects, as was written by the third Jawang Karmapa in his aspiration of Mahamudra. The meaning of the ground is the two truths, beyond or without the extremes of permanence and annihilation. And this means to recognize that the ground is beyond any elaborated extreme of permanence or true existence or annihilation or absolute non-existence. And he continues, the supreme path is the unity beyond extremes of the two accumulations without exaggeration or denial. Exaggeration or denial here means misapprehensions of the nature of things, that is to say, misapprehensions of the ground. When one asserts or believes that that which does not exist exists, that is exaggeration or superimposition. When one asserts or believes that that which does exist does not exist, that is denial. The path, therefore, is the process of coming to see the ground as it is, free of these two extremes. And in order to do this, it has two aspects, which are called the two accumulations. The conceptual or referential accumulation of merit, and the non-conceptual or non-referential accumulation of wisdom. The accumulation of wisdom refers to the process that begins with the establishment of the correct view, correct understanding of the ground, and continues with the process of meditating upon this. Now, from among the two accumulations, it is the non-conceptual accumulation of wisdom that is of primary or central importance. Nevertheless, this accumulation of wisdom can only occur in the midst of the right conditions. The other aspect of the path, the conceptual accumulation of merit, is necessary, therefore, in order to supply or create the right conditions or environment for the accumulation of wisdom. This involves what is called the gathering of the accumulation of merit, which can be done physically, verbally, mentally, by means of one's wealth and possessions and so forth. Through doing this, one enhances and facilitates the accumulation of wisdom. So therefore, the path consists of the integration of these two aspects.
Tene ta tanda tende ne tanda borela. Tene tanda gorganando suma te Saraha jalbo toha nando sumba te tanda tene chitang lam la tene topa jila che tupi ki junsen rabo ji suma rela. Tene te yang ta kasing control le siki pa yiba. Tene ta tere la siki pa yiba tige nang la jitang pe sum rabo ji nang yore la. Pe sum te ta tanda pe sum ka te ta ngaransu ke lam gam na tene ngone ke debu top ju yapa. Pen rabo je ne nang ne lam nyam sling ku solti ta tanda jitang ke kongji ku pa yendola dortin ta je hi ni ye na ne dortin rabo ji rela. Tene te ya pe thangbo te garisong yo are se na tene ta tene chuola pe ga bare. Chuo de lumba susu ne chuo mangpo pawe yo are la. Chuo mandawa tal lumba kahi ni chuo chenpo kahi ni lumba ni chuo chunchung. Chuo mandawa. Tende pawe yo are la. Te pap ne rodu de la kanan rogu yo are se na chuo kanga te Gyamtso nong rogu yo are. Gyamtso de tikpandal. Ta te yendo kunzon chunhong on de se na tene te la chunhong mandawa. Dewa, Dungal, Nyemo, Tene, Samba Zangbo, Kunhong, Lasoba, number Mandawa, no number not so Harge yor. Harge yore te, Yinaya te, Teningwini, Naranso, Nyams long ne, Teni Nelu Tigangala, Delta by Yungiora, Teni te perna, Cho number not so by Yinaya, Janso Tiganand Royendala. Tene kunzo gunchun number not so by inaya. Te lam tick on the city, gone in, they would top to by Yungi of a jay pe tambo.
That is the nature of the path. Now, what is presented about the path in the brief presentation of the path here in Saraha's Doha for the king is essentially the reason why the path works, why through the pursuit of the path one can achieve the fruition, which is realization. In the first verse we're going to look at today, verse 4, this is presented using three analogies. The verse says, "Though diverse rivers are one in the ocean, though myriad lies are overcome by a single truth, though darkness is manifold, the appearance of a single sun clears it away." The first of the three analogies is the analogy of rivers. It said, "Though diverse rivers are one in the ocean." This means that all rivers eventually flow into the ocean. This analogy represents the fact that although we undergo a vast variety of experiences or appearances produced by bewilderment, states of happiness, states of sadness, and almost infinite variations within them, all of these states, which are relative truths, have the same fundamental or single nature. Therefore, through the pursuit of one path, the bewilderment in its almost infinite variety of these states can be resolved.
Tene ta te la pe tangbo te tempare la ta pe nimba te kanti tempare se na tene zumba ta pe na zain te dembe gi Gyamtso yo re so re la tene ta chitang demba ta zumba namba ni he pe na ta zumba te la zain la namba na choba ta ti zain la 요래 라 테네 티 자인 넘버 나초바 티 나초바 요나야 테네 응네 세나 뎀바 제 요나 테네 티 자인 가세 제 랍나야 테네 자인 자차 요나야 뎀바 제게 테네 Gyamtso 요래 송아래라 베티 겐돌라 타티게 페세나양라 텐세나양라 테가라라 테네 나란송 코르웬 춘홍테 추벤노 좀바다 버지라 Tenen chunhong la namba natso ba kandeje xar na ya te tantan chulbiga nongwa ki jisu jo na ta korang chunhong rang re mato tenen tige ngupu nelu te yabo je ka somlo tang ne ngupu nelu demba te yabo je to na tenen tige tenen zimba te chasang chulbati dembati Gyamtso yo la tene junsin teacher na ngarang sogen chunhong kandeji yona ya rongte tene tanda gom ne ta jachewe ga onda se na chuni ge ne lu gom ne tene tige chunhong te pangju ya ba che da tene ta tanda sapa songhwa je onda se na tene semni ge ne lu te gom ne senji ne lu te chetawa jindo to ne tene tige nyamong ba to nam to ten zo rem ji hye ne tar tu kun de top ju ye ba ji im chir na tene zimba de dembe njong be pe go ne lam de nyamso long na lam gamba te la thola zani ro ge yo ma re la te la de bu ji top ju ye ba de ma re.
So the first analogy in the fourth verse is that of rivers in the ocean. The second analogy is that of lies and the truth. It says, "Though myriad lies are overcome by a single truth." And this represents the fact that no matter how many lies are told about something, once the truth is said or revealed, all of those lies, even if there are 100 of them, are disproven or shown to be lies or overcome. Now, this is, in one sense, an analogy, and in another sense, a statement about the nature of confusion and realization. Because regardless of how much bewilderment and ignorance we undergo, and regardless of how many varieties of bewildered appearances we experience in samsara, if the true nature of things is realized, because the bewilderment is bewilderment and therefore wrong or incorrect, the bewilderment is disproven and removed through the realization of the true nature. In other words, realization of what is true overcomes all possible misapprehensions about the nature. Now, from the point of view of the path of vastness, the path of the sutras, this means that through meditation on dharmata, the nature of all things, bewildered appearances can be eradicated. From the point of view of the path of profundity, the path of secret mantra, this means that in the same way, through meditation on the nature of the mind, bewilderment can be gradually eradicated as well. In short, what is especially significant here is that the path is not a waste because it actually brings one to fruition by the eradication of bewilderment.
Tene ta te yendola ta te pe ni batije pe sumba te tene nimi ge mambanjang pe pe te parela tene perna mamban tupo kandeji yona yandra tene mamba jachembo kandeji yona lumba kanga membe chapde patago je yona yandra lo tongcha ne tongcha ga par de la no za ne char ma nyong mamba jin rimbo tin di na ya ndati kande je yin na ya nima je char ne no je chang na tene mamba ti lo tongcha mangbo la tene ne pe mamba je yin na ya te no ti nima ti sal ro yo re la mamba ja chembo kande je yin na ya te nima ti sal ro yo re la 대견들 몸반 투부 간디지 요나야 니마 샤나티니 몸반 투부데 대사요 말이라 몸바티 살투기 요아라 베 대견도 되네 단다 간디지레세나 다 공도 템바 뎀바도 즘비 남겨다 버지 임비처나 단당 춘노디 나란소 내가 대회 넘바다 샤나야한다 대견도 동할지 넘바다 버지 샤나야한다 데 되네 나란소게 내루가 단테 냠슬로니 tene lam te gam na tigen chunhong te charju ye bache chunhong te pangju ye bache yang ta pa nelu te toju ye bache te temper se par la tin te pe sumba te nima ta membe pe ge mamba te nima charna tene mamba khandi ji na jam ro yo la pe te gen de yong ta pa nelu te to na tene te ge danda mong ba ta chuba ten so khandi ji na jam tu re so.
So that was the second analogy. The third analogy is the analogy of the sun and darkness. It says, though darkness is manifold, the appearance of a single sun clears it away. No matter how dark a place is, and no matter how vast an area is covered by darkness, even an entire country, and no matter how long that area has been dark, even if it has been dark for thousands of years, once the sun shines upon it, the darkness is eliminated in an instant. Regardless of how long it has been dark, regardless of how vast an area of darkness there is, and regardless of how thick the darkness is, it is immediately eliminated by the sunshine. Now this represents the relationship between that which is true and that which is false. Regardless of how much bewilderment we experience and how long we have been experiencing it, and regardless of its variety, sometimes bewilderment manifests as a state of happiness, sometimes as a state of misery. If we cultivate the path through meditation on the nature of things, this bewilderment in all of its variety, intensity, and having been there for a long time, can be removed, and the nature can be seen as it is.
Tene ta te ta Doha ta ngurge re tsig la tene te yang khori nyam to ba che parchi tuji lan chumba la tene tanda mong ba tang chuba tenzo kanga Gyamtso ya patin chen ne tene Lama chola ya tetabu ge tongwa ta trowa chi be che tun Gyamtso re tene lam de tu re Sunga Tabaji La. Tinite Naranso Lam Rimba Yindola dripping on the Tona. Tinite Winnie Lam de drip to be your reti, Yinayon Lam drip a la. Tini Tati Lam de Rimba Yindola dritni. Tinite la Nyamyon Rabuji Gogi or la. Tinipena Naranson Rabuji Yinaya, Ta Tonchiri Yendotini, Tonchiri Yendotilandoa. Dabota, Khenchen Khenchen Yendajilan capsula, Tene Lam Norgir, Lam de Tempo, Lam Norwan Dabota, Tene Lam Landroma Hebandabo, Young Cigarella. Tate, my own Chetula Candidate Resena, Tene Huma Yamyong tea up because Sata Yapo, Gelatani. Tene Talam Chin Candela, Andran Candidate Landrokuto. Tene lam chungwa tene tanda dundo kandiji na lam jie gugudu. Ta tenzo yapo tani ndro na tene ngwene lep tubere la. Tene te mata wala ndro na, tene nyamnyo mepa la ndro na, tene ngwene lep matu pandabo ta. Lam norwanda bo yungi yore. Re la, tene te ngaranso kandiji ndro gugu yore se na, tene te lam norwanda bo saptanda bo tsangma yore. Yopate kandiji re se na, tang humaga tuto chimbo kanga, tene langwa tangpo ngaranso nanghin ke susu jiyo chunong jing yinpa la. Tene kong nambi ke lam dre ni, langwa tene ndro ni, langwa te dre ni, tartu kun drebu top ni. Tene ti ke sha jing ke sol, te ta jay nyam songan rabo ma yinpa. Ta nguma tende jay ke lam te gam tali re te, yina ya tanda lam te kandi se gam gugu yopa te Saraha kogu yo mare, senken rabo jay ma yinpa. Ngani mirab la, tene tuto chimpo tenzo seni, tene tenzo ke lam dende se gam gugu re. Le tangpo pa susu jiyo tuntong tong jay pe kapsa la, lam dende se gam gugu re. Tene ya la topa te sinyi na, dende se gam gugu yo. Tele ya galna, ten dendesi ne drebu togri samne be topa te ngus pechi ten la yepa. Pechi ten tu yepa tsam mahimba. Tene lalin tar yimba. Lalin tar ni tene kora drebu ke tsorte chasang tanda yore.
In this fourth verse of the Doha, essentially Saraha has expressed, as a consequence of his realization and experience, his certainty that the path can remove ignorance. And he expresses this in order to assure his disciples who were listening that this can be done, and in that way to encourage them, therefore, to pursue the path. Now, in order to pursue any path, in order to get from one place to another, we need some kind of map or guidance, which is based on someone having actually experienced or traveled the path themselves before. For example, if you want to go from one city to another or from one state to another, you have to make sure that you know how to get there so that you don't take the wrong roads and the wrong highways and get lost. Usually, in order to prevent that, you use some kind of map. And by looking at the map, you learn what highways you should take and what local roads you need to take in order to get to the right highway. Well, we have a map for this road or this path. And the map was written or produced by the generation after generation of Mahasiddhas, all of whom began exactly like us, in a state of ordinary bewilderment, and through pursuing this path and experiencing it, achieved its result, the eradication of bewilderment. Therefore, they have described the path. And this map, which describes the path and enables us not to get lost while traveling it, has itself not been effaced or lost over time. Some people wonder if we still possess the actual and accurate instructions which will enable us to traverse the path. We do. These have not been lost or effaced or reduced over time. In fact, each generation of Mahasiddhas has added further clarification. The map that shows us how to begin the path as beginners and how to continue the path once we have gained some degree of experience and realization, still exists. And we can find it in the books of instruction on the practice of Mahamudra, and it tells us how to do the whole thing.
Tene ta telaya ta tangbo zawanda boji na kandite nang yore se na tene tangbo chula hyupa la depa tempo yoba tene teya tanda jalsa champangbu ge song hesing ngantu jeng nang song na ndamba satabu senji song yore la tene tangbo chula depa tang ndamba yoba te sayin rabujire 배는 하나서 강바지 잡고는 사샤요 봐. 사지된 잡고. 흰가지 따면 사지된 따고 그래. 대전도 매도지 따면 사샤가 된 따고 그래. 사샤 땜보지 이거나 되니 대라 연된 강가 통투비 와라. 되니 대 대파당 덤바 야보지 이거나 되니 대라 되니 나란서 롱기 연된데 차상 중기 와라. 디천나 덤바 사다비 생기 송한다. 되니 대파 사이다 무슨 kin다보다 된데 성요war라 다 넘바다 대파데 다 단다치 넘바 강가라 랑hingi 제게요와레 추dun데 로 추데 약보임바 담비 추데 약보임바 추데 냠린시 근긴지임바 디단도 동보 히네 데네데 라 넘바지니 졸와시 깔리 잡네 데네 난게요와라 teni te yang ndamba te yang jitang ke kapkala lobro wandabo chi sigarela teni ngaranso ndamba lobro wandabo yang yinna yang yapore teni jitang ke ndamba te nekap ke jingla teni chungwa tago yinna yang yapore te yinna yang tsawa tembo chi chepala kari gogi yore se na teni hine tepa topa sigi yorela ta tangpo junsin tabo te yapo chi hine tene ndamba tempo che da tepa tempo che yunya che galche ge yore la tene hine kandisi ne tepa tempo te chetoba nang ge yore se na tene ngaranso ge gomjala lodo namba ya se gom ge yore la lodo senken te chitang ge juman da boji re te yina ya tepe galche bo re la tene di ge nguni tambe chu drup gu ge junsen kan yimba 담비 추 마드나 캔 카레 용게 여봐 담비 추 드나 yenten 카레 토게 여봐 덴조 살보르 또바인 베처나 데네 다제 로도 넘바 이 코르티 야포제 송 땅나 데네 당보 레 당보바게 데 갈체게 가르치고 그러세나 데 가르쳐와래 드니 상지 좀 된데 지성나 로도 넘바 예 나도 예베 마타바타버지나 드니 마타바데 송로 야보 제 땅나 드니 데베 가르쳐와래라 드니 다 예 탐지가 나네 롱보지 제인초 임바인들라 드니 누히 탐지가 나네 마타반 누히 체버던 파바 인성네 pena lombo chege je de rimbo yo maimpa tel son yo maimpa ko dombo yabo je jachimbo je yaba teni mege je ndabo je ya rimbo ndabo je khahi kangbe je na pan tel son ndabo tende yore lombo chege je dombo yabo je yore la pe te yendo tanda mata pandu hi de tene kangala tambur chuela ko jensi 바르도 젠르스쿠르 따시 숨기요라라 드니 당보 추라 대파 대점면나 대파 제위 조세기요 바르도 젠르라 꿀기요라라 갑깔라 메몽부게 나란 추라 대파 템보요 여때 있는 드롭 투구면도 다 양흠만 야포 드롭 투구여데 다 히로 드롭 투구면도 생긴다고다 야나 가시게 나 추라 대파 템보 요아레데 있는 냠린 히로시 투구면도 생긴다고다 근데 내가 그 찐용기 요아레라 찐데 간디기 셀고기 요아레세나 저도 로도 남바야 대나네 tene matapa gambate te sisong matana tene zendu te sichong de sona zendu chimbola se tabata tepa te sichong de sona tepa te tembola jurto bandabo ta tende yongi yore la teacher na tangbo ina yanra le tangbo pi gomna yanra le tangbo ba main ba ngaran su chu nyang se len yim be kabla te zendu chong de sona ta tepa chong de sona ndabo ta tende ga kabla ya 진 간디지 라티고나 간디지 강고 그래서나 로도 넘바 기티 양세 센지된 sommatana 되니 꿀마용 요래
The root of one's entrance into Dharma is faith and interest. And therefore, it was said by the protector Maitreya in his Ornament to Clear Realization, an explanation of the Prajnaparamita, that faith is like the ground. Saying that faith is like the ground or the earth means that if you want to grow anything, trees, crops, flowers, whatever, you need the ground, you need the earth. In the same way, faith is like the ground or the earth from which all of the qualities of the path arise. So therefore, from the very beginning, faith and interest in Dharma is very important. Now all of you have naturally developed this. First, you understood enough about the Dharma to have interest in it, and through great exertion and austerity, you have pursued its practice and study. Nevertheless, we have to carefully look at the quality of our faith and interest. Interest can be stable, or it can be temporary or ephemeral. Now, even ephemeral interest in Dharma is, of course, good. Even so, it is produced by conditions, and when those conditions change, it can vanish. Therefore, we need to stabilize our interest and faith. And this is done by knowing the reasons for interest in and faith in Dharma. In order to do this, the practice that is recommended is the series of contemplations called the four thoughts which turn or change the mind. Through studying and contemplating these, you come to understand the benefits and reasons for Dharma practice and the defects of the absence of practice. All of this is clearly presented in the instruction on these contemplations. Thinking about these things very carefully is very important for beginners. But in fact, it is not only important for beginners. About these, the Buddha said, speaking of the contemplation of impermanence, which is one of the four thoughts, that just as the footprint of an elephant is the best footprint, the contemplation of impermanence is the best contemplation or perception. The statement that the footprint of an elephant is the best footprint means not only that elephant footprints are very large, but that they are a nice, round, uniform shape. They are not elongated and strange like human footprints. In the same way, the contemplation of impermanence is the best or most uniform state of mind. In the beginning, it is impermanence that inspires one's initial generation of faith and interest in Dharma. But after that, it is faith that it is impermanence that inspires and encourages diligence. For example, people often come to me and say, I'm really interested in Dharma, but I cannot make myself practice. Or sometimes they say, I used to practice a lot, but nowadays I just can't make myself do it. Or they may say, I really want to practice, but somehow I can't get it together. I can't find the time or circumstances. In all of these cases, the remedy for this inability to generate the diligence that you wish for or hope for is contemplation of impermanence. Through contemplation of impermanence, when you find that your diligence is flagging, it will increase. When you find that you're losing your faith, it will return. So impermanence is important from the beginning as one's initial inspiration, but also throughout the path as the means of overcoming loss of faith and loss of diligence. Therefore, contemplation of the four thoughts is important not only in the beginning, but continually throughout one's pursuit of the path.
Tene ta te tabu ga lodu namba ye go ni ta tepa tempo che tepa che pa che ta tepa te tempo ye pa che ta tempo ye pa junsin te ya tene ranking ke tepa che wan ma impa she ne tepa to pa si tu tompo junsin te ya po che she ne 대바티 게임인데 저는 대바티 템보다 대바티 휴침보 뭐바티 템보 뭐바티 휴침보 용거요라 되니 디처나 당보 다 되니 바르도 당 가두이나야 로도 넘버게데 양세 생기된도 거와 다 람라 데퍼시베 카슬라 람 넘버 2 요라 람 넘버 2데 되니 다 단다 ngaranso ngoni nyamsu len yimbala tabdor ji lam ni se tablam dong lam number ni yore la tene ta teya tene dolam chaja chimpotan tablam naro chudu se ta ten number ni yore la tene te la tene tablam la Depressive kapsa la ya ta tangbo ngaranso senam chi su sa pa la so pa tangbo chapsun do ta rang dik dip jang la so pa ta tinde gi che do la tangbo ngro nyam ni che tene remji tene yiram che lai jerem gam tene ta te ngro nyam ni che go ne tene lama la mu gi che pa lamen nan jor gam pa gam tene te ji so la yiram che la drup Yiram Jalai, Jerem Gum, Yiram Jalai, Zorem Gum, ne, tini, Topa Cheprachi Jilla Jevarsi, Tap, Nawatella, Tablam Sekior. Tela, Tablam Latine, Lam Depersipa. Teni, Trolam Chaja Chimbo Latine, Lam Depersipa, Tapti, Kandiji Yovarisena, Teni, Tatella Tambo, Teni, Rangaranso, Semte, Teni, tempo me pala tene semtela namto mambo te hiwar chawe ki chetla hine gam tene hine tong lantong te gambe ge tro la kande chi go ge yore se na tene tapsun ro ta degba hya pala so nganru nyamne che nganru ge nyamne che pala tene hine te tempo me pala hine te tempo yepa hine ma chi pa te hine jewa Lantong ke nyam machi na lantong ke nyam jewa lantong ke nyam de tempo me na lantong ke nyam de tempo ro la so ba go ne ta tanda kondu hi ba yendo dokur tadr chu ni lam chu ki hi ba ta mimi hi ji chu ji on de se na hi ne tong lantong ke ting zen kam mi ji sonam ji chu ji on de se na ta rang sonam ji chu so Tela tene topa koni konde pel. Teya senam ge tsu sa persipi ge tapte. Tang ngandro namba ya nyamni chepa tang. Tene lamen nanjor la tene tepa tang mugi chepa. La so pe go ne. Tene hine tong lang tong te koni konde pel ne. Gambar sipi ge tap. Tablam tong tolam namba nyi yore. Tablam tong tolam namba nyi yore te. Yina ya lam te tsi. Nekab ga lam ge chepa re mato. Tartu kun rosi lamgwa dabote ta tartu ku toju ku ngo dabote tikpalan ro yore
Through the contemplation of the four thoughts, one initially generates a stable faith, and subsequently, through the continuation of these contemplations, one is able to further stabilize, strengthen, and reinforce that faith while pursuing the path. Through doing this, the faith that is initially generated and subsequently further developed is not a casual faith or uninformed faith. It is informed. It is faith that is based upon having the correct information about the reasons for faith. It is therefore much stronger and much more stable. So therefore, one continues to perform the contemplations of the four thoughts throughout one's pursuit of the path. Now, the actual path itself can occur in two ways, and these are called the two paths, the path of method or means and the path of liberation. The path of liberation is Mahamudra, and the path of method or means is the six dharmas of Naropa. In order to pursue the path of method, one has to begin with gathering the accumulations of merit and wisdom and purifying obscurations. This is done through the practices of going for refuge, the practice of Vajrasattva, the mandala, Guru Yoga, and so on. Upon completing the practice of Guru Yoga and receiving the blessing of one's teacher and lineage, one then performs the practice of a yidam. And through the generation stage practice and subsequently the completion stage practice itself, one achieves realization. That is the path of method. The path of liberation is the practice of Mahamudra. And it begins with the stabilization of the previously unstable mind through the practice of tranquility, and then the pursuit of the actual practice of insight. But in order to assist and facilitate and enhance the main practices of tranquility and insight, even while pursuing the path of liberation, one still engages in methods for gathering the accumulations. That is to say, the preliminary practices such as going for refuge, vajrasattva, and so forth, which were mentioned in the context of the path of method. These serve to greatly enhance the practices of tranquility and insight. When one's practice of tranquility is unstable, it can be stabilized through these practices. When one lacks insight, insight can be generated by these practices. Therefore, the path in either format conforms to what was said about it by the third Karmapa Rongjun Dorje when he wrote, "The supreme path is that of the two accumulations, without or beyond the extremes of exaggeration and denial." So in this way, the principal path is facilitated through the gathering of the accumulation of merit. Furthermore, although in their format the paths of method and liberation may appear distinct, that which is to be realized by them and that which is achieved through them, and furthermore the nature of the path itself, is the same.
Tene ta te tardo tene talang tong tong number ni ware la tene talang tong tong ni ka te ngo chik pan da bo che ngo chik pa yin ba che ta tene dev te chik pa la tene teacher na ya tolam chang ba nyam le se na yong de yore talam chang ba nyam le na na yong de yore talang tong tong ni ka nyam le na na ya te pe ya po shi ro yung yore la Ti nane ta chei mixal ke ta arang chanong da botela teni pe ta tingsang ke kaptang teni tanda nuchola mixal ke pemba ti teni tolam chaja chimpo ti pe kal chewa ta pento chewa yung re samba da bote te yung ge junsen te khande jire se na teni perna 다 당보 ngaranso nangba sanji bichu te jagarla tarwarela tene jagarla tarwe kapsulaya ta jagarla songho doji ti bichu tarwe kapsula tene chepartam pop tuto chimpo jechu tsai chambare tene tuto chimpo jechu tsai chambege namtar tenzola tang je jalna tene ta khonamba kanga nyamle nangne tubatoba shadarela Tuba topa shata re la, teni te la ya, che, tuto chimpo jechu tsayi te la, misi ki netang mandawa yore la. Misi ki netang mandawa di per na, jalpo indaboti tabaji yinna. Ta di kap ki jalpo chimpo yinba, jalpo te la sonam chimpo yeba, palanjuru chimpo yeba, teni, 다 대견들라 jalbo텔라 레카 망보이야바 랭게 망보이야바 자시 쫑고바 드네 다제 내양롱제 자침보이야바 레카 망보이야바 근데 레데 예나양 콩게 내양라 롱제 연도다 자시 그 랭게인데 드로 연도라 드네 토바토바 중화레라 teacher tene le te ta chaje chimbo te gamne toba imbicher na pe te la tinde lenge mangbo ya pa tinde la ya pe ta te pe kadula pento chimbo ya pa ta tinde jire la tene te yendola tanda kepa chimbo on de na tene pende ta chimbo tene papa ludup ta baji na tene papa ludup de pe mesi ben kepa chimbo tene kepa chimbo imbe chena tene konge tenju mambo zamba tenju mambo tsambala tenne tenne kepa ngama tenju ke lodo deji netsul to mantimba song yapa tenzo la gakpa ne de namba ja ta ngarang uni norwala nor duga sambata ngon che to bata tende gakpa ne de namba jap na ta tenne rang yepa tomo mai pa de ta sanji je 가당 땡큐 된다 된절은 레히 자운데 근데 레히 뭐네 약보든데 잡네 근데 뭐 강가라 이치 찌또 반다고 근데 송요라라 다 지진 개바탐지게 송나 근데 넘버 산지빈 개바탐지게 땡큐다 인데 넘버 산지바 마인베 땡큐 인나야 근데 파파 루드 셴베 능게 개바탐지게 좀 땡큐다 tenen papa ludo sembe jig keba tamji ke tenju ni den ragyo mare la junsin karire sena papa ludo zombe tenju ti ke ripa de nota ba jeta papa ludo zombe tenju de sal traba la tene kanga ke papa ludo ke tenju ke shok na bo de hiro hyo ne tene papa ludo ke jis ngone jis rong ke mai na ti jis man rong da bo chog yo la de ta bu tenju zam gakpa tab, gakpa nida namba jab, tene te tabi temba pel, nzeba tene jachimbo re te, ina yin kong drupa topa re. Drupa topa te kandi ki tabla tene drupa topa re se na kong ke tene chaja chimbo gamne drupa topa re la. Te tabi ina ya te la, chaja chimbo ta kong ke nzeba tan tene niti nyamdo hong topa je re la. Tene te yendo la ya, druto chimbo kashi penna, te lo bandabu je ina, tene te leka memba, tel dunganda ko ta tende ga shale nang ge yore de yendo ta khahi tuto chimbo tenzo leka kyuma leka memba tende nang ge yore de leka memba de nang yendo la ya chaja chimbo gamne tuba thop thu ge yore la tende perna ngaranso danda ge netan ra boje yena ya khahi shale ja chimbo nang ge khahi shale ten sapo nang ge tende khahi neka shale kyuma tab devo nang ge ta tende mangbu yo ndramanda mangbu yore la te kanga la tumbaje ke nyamlin te tene kadu yinayo shaje chimbo hine tong hong tong tingen zen te gam na ten tela ten drebu top tobaje yung re sambaje ta ten ta ti hyola ngundu gi nyamlin da na na be mesete chue dan tambata chue lan derwa ye pa be ya bo yung re sambaje.
Since the paths of method and liberation have the same nature and lead to the same result, it is possible to practice either one of these in isolation or to combine their practice. My opinion is that nowadays, and especially in a Western context, the path of liberation, Mahamudra, is going to be of the greatest benefit. The reason why I feel this is that if we look at the history of Buddha Dharma, and specifically at what happened in India, the country in which it initially flourished, when the Vajrayana tradition in particular was flourishing there, we observe that there appeared in India 84 individuals who are referred to as the 84 Mahasiddhas. If we look at their lives, we see that what they had in common was that all of them practiced and all of them attained realization and siddhi. But beyond that, their lifestyles varied tremendously. For example, some of them were in very high social positions. For example, the king Indrabhuti was a tremendously powerful, wealthy king who lived in a situation of great luxury and also had to fulfill tremendous responsibilities. While fulfilling his responsibilities as a powerful king and enjoying the luxury of his court life, he nevertheless was able to practice Mahamudra meditation and achieve supreme siddhi. We can infer from this example that Mahamudra therefore works when practiced in a situation of busyness, tremendous responsibility, and great luxury. Other Mahasiddhas Did I say something funny? Well, other Mahasiddhas were great scholars. For example, best known among them was the great Pandit Arya Nagarjuna, who was one of the greatest scholars ever to arise in the Buddhist tradition. Throughout his life, he composed a vast number of treatises which clarified aspects of the Buddha Dharma that had previously never been clarified. Among his compositions, he effectively refuted previous incorrect or mistaken scholarship. He did so effectively that even those he refuted accepted his refutations of them. He properly explained Buddha Dharma in a way that it had never previously been explained, and therefore caused a greatly widespread correct understanding of the Buddha's teachings. His influence was so tremendous that while it's obvious and understandable that the Buddhist scholarly tradition was completely different after Nagarjuna's time from what it was before that, even non-Buddhist scholarly traditions in India were radically changed or altered by Nagarjuna's writing. This is because the precision of Nagarjuna's reasoning was unprecedented, and therefore even those who did not follow his system of tenets or views were influenced by his methods of reasoning. So even though Nagarjuna was so busy teaching, composing, debating, and so forth, he still managed to achieve supreme siddhi in his lifetime, and he did so through the practice of Mahamudra. It's therefore evident that Mahamudra can be practiced effectively in the midst of a busy lifetime of scholarship. Other Mahasiddhas had common occupations, some of them even lowly. For example, the great Siddha Tilopa was a sesame seed grinder, and many of them had similar common occupations. And yet these too were able to practice Mahamudra and through that achieve supreme siddhi. Now if we look at our situation nowadays, we see that some practitioners are in high social positions with great responsibilities and living in great luxury. Others have ordinary occupations which keep them busy. Others are academics and scholars and so forth. The point of the example of the Mahasiddhas is that all of these types of people and all of these types of lifestyles permit the effective practice of Mahamudra. And through that practice, through that meditation, all practitioners can definitely achieve supreme siddhi. I furthermore think that especially if the practice of Mahamudra is combined with the practice of the preliminaries, it will go very well.
Tene ta tige lamte temparella, tene ti jisla Drebuti ndor temparella, Drebuti ndor temparella tsiskepa ta trupa ta damba itiru. Tambo yivachi ngabata trupa nitinzere. Ngabata trupa niti, ngabatige tene pete tempata trupa tige tente temparella. Tene teya drebu topati ta kandeji drebuti topni tene pelndip mepa. Pe Gyamtso la pe yaparela. Gyamtso la pe kandeji yaparese na Gyamtso ge chote ta timbage nando langbala yandro ni tene te charwala jorni ta zombu lenge sage tente lembanda boji che tupe choje chote ta langbage ya khurna ya timbati ya khurna ya Gyamtso de nyondon rogyo marela pe jeje. 다 잔소티 뜸바티게 차바티 밥네 다티 사게 땡데 초가 강화는 힌지세네 다티 초데 잔소 친분나다 파진 도준도 가서라 잔소 친분 펠이야 투기요 말에 잔소 친분티 코나 뜸바게 초카시 야랑소나야 잔소라 체중매바 대기요 알라 되는 좀빌랭게 초카시지 잔수노도 밥나야 잔소 텔람 망두 만도와 다보지 대기와래 다티 빼대버래 세수제바 nga바티게 다 세수제바 두바티게 된데 다 나란속을 람데 감니 냠슬론니 산지기 연tin 토고요 타르투 드레부 토고요 알라 되는 타르투 그 드레부데 토프 캡슐라 다 추니 그때 또 세나양라 렌지지비 예시 산지 내루 제다와 인도 또 세나양라 띠 되니 다 데이터블라 되니 데이터부기 엔텐도 덴베카슬라 엔텐티 산지기 엔텐티 예 내루라 예 엔텐티 토파렐라 티처나 야름 펠와타 마른 드판다보 폰주른다보 산지지 공ponto는 폰주른다보 가야 용기요 말레스 다데 세스제바 두파티다
That fourth verse has been the brief presentation of the path. And now we come to the third section, which is the brief presentation of the fruition. And this occupies two verses, the fifth and the sixth. The fifth verse gives the analogy for the state of fruition, and the sixth verse explains the analogy or gives its meaning. Essentially, what is being presented here in the fifth and sixth verses is that the fruition is a state beyond increase and decrease. The analogy used is the ocean. Although the water from the ocean is sublimated into the atmosphere, taken up by clouds, and then sent down again as rain, the ocean is not depleted through the sublimation of the water, nor is it increased through the rainfall, because the amount of water involved in the whole system remains constant or the same. In the same way, through the pursuit of the path, when one achieves its result, which is the qualities of Buddhas, because in essence the result is the correct and full realization of dharmata, the nature of things, or otherwise put, of spontaneously present co-emergent wisdom, because that which is realized is that basic nature as it is, which is unchanging, then the qualities of the fruition, like the ocean, are unchanging. That is to say, they cannot be lost, nor do they increase or decrease. Larry?
테네 다들이 대점 책인 식스케바 두바리 식스케바 두바 간사마 여기야나 된 단응하도 양가란스 좀더 검대 지잖아서
I'm going to stop there for this morning with that sixth verse, and we'll use the remainder of the session for some meditation practice.
Gyamtso